In this tutorial, I'm going to show you some view model animation for beginners. So, to start, you'll need a couple of things. First, you'll need Blender. This is the piece of software that I have open right now. It's free to download, and I will provide a link in the description. And if you already have Blender and have working knowledge, then you can go right ahead. But if you're new to Blender, I also have a link to a playlist of really awesome Blender beginner tutorials to get you started. Alright, once you have those things downloaded and once you have some working knowledge of Blender, we can get started. If you aren't quite sure what a view model animation is, I will put an example up on screen. And to describe it briefly, it's basically an animation of a character's arms in a first-person view. And the reason that view model animation is so cool is because it's easy to do and easy to set up, but it is also a great way to practice your animation skills. So, the arms that I have here are from Hyper. I will provide a link in the description to those arms, and once you have those, you're going to need something to put in the arms. Now, a gun is usually a good way to start, so I have a couple here. I took these from Counter-Strike Global Offensive. They're all the weapons right here. I will provide a link where you can download these. They have them openly available on their blog, so it's not illegal. They give this stuff to you. So I am going to do the AK-47. Once you import it, it'll probably look like this. Now, this obviously isn't really the correct size. Now, what you want to do is you want to get it in the correct spot and the correct size. So I'm just going to hit tab to go into edit mode, and with everything selected, I'm going to be moving it and placing it. Don't do this in object mode. Do it in edit mode so it just affects the mesh and not the actual object transform. So just kind of move it about and just kind of get it in a nice position. So I think the position is pretty good, and now you want to get the size. A good way to do this is to just put the arms here and then size the trigger where the finger will fit nicely. So maybe like maybe that, and then kind of check your view and make sure that looks good, and then you can just pose the hands. It's really simple. Just get a really rough pose and see if the size looks correct. Doesn't have to look very good hardly at all. So I'm just gonna do this and change the pull targets. Once you have that done, you might actually notice that your weapon is either too small or too big, or that it's just right. I think that the model is the correct size. So now I'm going to be doing a final positioning, like the final positioning of the hands. One cool trick in Blender with the fingers is just press L to select the entire finger, and then in the pivot points, select individual origins, and then you can just rotate it like this, and it will rotate all the fingers and curl them up nicely. You can of course modify this and uncurl a couple bones, but this is very cool, and it makes a really realistic result for like a relaxed hand pose. So just keep that in mind. Okay, I think I noticed that the gun is a tad bit large, so I'm just gonna scale it a little bit smaller just to make sure it fits well in the hand. I think that is pretty good, so I'm just gonna quickly finish up here. Alright, I have laid out the main pose of the hands. Now we are not quite ready to animate yet, and the next thing we have to do is actually connect the weapon up to this arm rig so that they're both on the same armature or the same bone sets, so that we can animate them in unison kind of. It makes it a lot easier, and I'm going to be doing this. It's actually quite simple. So just select your weapon, and then using L, select the parts of the weapon that you actually want to be separate. So I'm just going to do that to this magazine really quick. Alright, and then once you have that part selected, just press P and then separate selection, and that will become its own object. Now with the bolt, you don't want to just select this, you also want to select this, because this is also part of the bolt, because when you pull it back, it kind of like reveals this inside part where the shell would eject, but we're not really going to see that, but I'm just going to do it anyways, so just adds a little bit of a touch to it. You can separate the trigger, but I'm not really going to bother. It's going to add a little more complexity, and you can't really even see the trigger. We're just going to move the finger. So yeah, we are all done separating the objects. Now we can start rigging. So to start rigging, go into one of your objects and select, somewhere like in the middle. And I'm going to hit Shift S and then cursor to selected. And then I'm going to go on this armature and press Tab to go into edit mode. And I'm going to hit Shift A and add a new bone. And this is going to be the magazine bone. So just extend it out like that so it's larger, so then you can actually select it. Then I'm going to scale it by hitting Control Alt S, and then I can scale it on a specific axis, such as the Y axis. And I'm going to click it and hit N, open up the tool shelf, and I'm just going to rename it to magazine. Alright, and I'm going to be repeating this process for all of the parts that are going to be moving. Alright, we have all the bones laid out, but as you can see, this is the main bone, so this moves the main body. If we move this, it doesn't move the body. So to do this, select, say, the body, and then shift select the bone it's supposed to be connected to. Hit Control P, and then hit bone. And now it will follow it. So just repeat this process for all of your moving parts. I actually forgot to make the bone for the magazine release, so I'm going to do that quickly here. Alright, once you have finished, we can now move on to actually connecting each of the parts together, because if we move it, it will move, but the different parts don't really connect up. Now to actually connect the bones to the bones they're supposed to be connected to, select, say, the magazine, because the magazine is supposed to be connected to the body. So select it, and over on the right, click the bone with the chain link. These are the bone constraints. Hit Add Bone Constraints, and then in the relationship column, hit Child Of. And then target, I'm actually going to click the eyedropper tool, and eyedrop the object, and then select the bone. Now, if you named your bones, you can just type it in and very easily find it. When you click it, it goes way off to the side. This is because you have to click Set Inverse, and then it'll return it to its original position. I'm going to repeat this process for the rest of them. Now, if I select this main bone and hit grab, it moves the gun, but the hands don't really do anything. They don't really follow it. So we're going to fix that now. We are going to be attaching the hands to the guns. So when we move the gun, the hands follow. Now, I'm going to select the right hand, or whatever hand you have on the grip. I'm going to hit, now it already has a child of constraints, but if it doesn't, again, add bone constraints and then child of. And it's red. This is red right here, meaning it is not parent to do anything. So to fix that, just go to the bone and parent it to main, or whatever you call the main body. And again, hit Set Inverse to fix the position. And now, if we take the gun and move it, this hand moves with it. Now, you may think that you just do the same thing here. Just hit main, then Set Inverse. However, it does work, but we want to be able to take this hand and have it grab the magazine and take it out really easily. Now for this, instead of main, I'm going to be parenting it to the magazine instead. And Set Inverse, it still acts exactly the same, but it also follows the magazine. Because the magazine is attached to the body, when we move the body, it moves exactly like this one. The magazine bone moves exactly like the main bone that is parented to. And since this is parented to that one, then it moves exactly the same. It might be a little hard to understand, but it's a little bit hard to understand. But if you just do that, it'll be fine. We have now set up the rig, and it is now time to start animating. Now, if you feel that the weapon is in a really awkward position, this is a good time to take your main bone and move it so that it looks a bit better. And you can tweak the pose a bit to make it look as nice as possible, which I am going to do. You can tweak stuff like the hand position. That was just a kind of a placeholder pose. Alright, once you've done your final tweaks, now we can actually get into the animating part of this tutorial. So, to start, you want to make sure that in this timeline area, this timeline row, you want to make sure that this record button is checked. And that in this box, you have it set to lock rot. Now this stands for location and rotation. So when you move a body part, it automatically keyframes it or stores it in memory. So if I go to frame 10, then I move it, it'll automatically save that I actually moved it. Now as you can see, when I moved it, the hand got really weird, and this is because it doesn't have enough slack from the shoulder, so I just need to move the shoulder forward a bit. And for some reason, it like snaps back, and a way around this, if it actually happens to you, is when you move it, just press I, and then it'll add the keyframes that you need. To start our animation, we're going to be doing what's called a blockout. This is a very rough draft of your animation, kind of like writing a paper. You make a very rough draft that isn't going to be shown to anyone, and then after that you make revisions and you change things. So that's what we're going to be doing now. I usually go in intervals of 3 to 5 frames. You can use whatever intervals you like, depending on your animation style and how fast you would like your animation to be. I'm kind of like the in-between the fast and slow, so I'm going to do that. Alright, now I have laid my first pose in, and it isn't great, and as you'll notice, the gun starts off in this weird position, and if I just press Alt R and G, it'll reset the positions, and again I have to do some tweaking. This is simply because it didn't keyframe whatever I put in as the final pose, but now it does. So now this doesn't look too great, but all you have to do is just get the main poses down. We're gonna fix the timing now, so just space things out, make things faster and slower. So this is really simple. If a part seems too slow, just put the other frames that are in front of it close. Maybe it's a little too fast, and if so, just take the frames that are in front of it, just move it. So move the frame, the pose that you want to speed up or slow down, and just move it. So if you want it to be really fast, you move it closer. And if you want it to be slow, just move it farther away. So I want this to be a little slower. Maybe like, yeah, probably right there. Alright, I have modified the timing a little bit. However, you'll notice it doesn't quite look good right now. This is mainly because the actual weapon itself doesn't really react when things are happening. So, an easy way to do this is to just imagine what kind of physical forces are being applied on the object. So when you take it out, what direction might the object be moving? Like what forces might be exerted on the object? And you gotta think of everything, like even the thumb pushing on something as little as a mag release might contribute to a motion. A lot of things in animation do contribute to the overall motion of an object, so just keep that in mind when you're animating. Alright, so our animation is beginning to take shape. It's not quite there yet. We're going to have to add a bit of in-betweening and a bit of detail. Now, for example, this hands, it's going through a lot of stuff. It's only going from this pose to this one. That's all the computer knows. It only knows these 2 points. We need to give it a couple more. So, for example, at the halfway point, we can say the hand is maybe right here. So, once I position it, then you can see it doesn't really clip, but it's not, I mean, it's a bit better. And then, of course, at this in-between frame, you can also move things like the fingers to make the fingers not so, you know, robotic, where it's only moving like a little tiny bit. So this might be things like changing, you know, the fingers, maybe opening them up a little bit. That's a good way. That's a very good way to add a bit of life to your animation, is to add some more dynamic motion, make things move. So now as you can see, the hand is kind of nicely transitioning. As you can notice, when you're scrubbing through, if something feels off, like it's rotating too fast, what you can do is, there's a couple tools in here that can help you, like break downer, or like something like propagate or push or relax. And the relax makes the current pose more similar to the surrounding ones, but doing it manually can help. So for example, right here, it's right about here, and then here, it's like that. It's rotated really, really weirdly. So I can actually rotate it like this, and then that looks a bit better. Now this thumb, we're gonna have to deal with the thumb. I'm gonna animate it. I'm gonna make it so that it kind of curls around, and make sure it does not clip the magazine whatsoever. Now, between these 2 frames, there is no in-between, so it just jumps from this position to this position. When the animation is played at full speed, no one is really going to notice this. So just make sure that nothing really clips too much. You can have stuff clip a little teensy bit, but not much. I mean, if it's a more stylized animation and it's less detailed, you can sure go for that. So now the hands looks a bit better. What about the magazine? Now, the magazine, again, it only has 2 poses for the computer to work with. We only have this pose, and then you have that pose. We need to give it a little more information. So, for example, right here, it's just moving out to the side. That doesn't really look terribly realistic, so I'm going to rotate it so that it's kind of more in there, and then it's like that. But now, it jumps really far. Now, this means that's really fast. So I am just going to do this. Maybe do this, and then that. Now this is still really fast, so I'm just gonna select the frames that I want to speed up or slow down, and then hit S to scale them, and we'll spread them apart. Now this doesn't look like a whole lot better, but with a bit of practice, you can make it look good. So I don't really know if that looks really great. Now, the magazine, it goes up a lot. Like right here, it's probably up a little bit too much. Yeah, that looks a lot better. You don't want things to move up or down too fast or too much or too exaggerated, unless that's your style that you're trying to go for. But generally, you don't want things to be terribly exaggerated if you're going for a more realistic look. Now, as you can see, when the magazine actually gets taken out, the gun doesn't really react that much. Now, again, you need to think about the forces that are being applied. So it's like, yeah, it doesn't look that great. So when the magazine is starting to be taken out, you're pulling on it, and this will pull the gun downwards. So just move the gun towards it like this. Now it starts moving downwards, like right about here, and the magazine doesn't start to move till around here. So I'm gonna go here and create a keyframe where it's still kind of in the same position. And of course, when the magazine starts getting pulled on, the gun doesn't really move down that much, so just fix that by moving it downwards. and you don't want to move down too much because you're not pulling on it really that hard, because once you push the magazine release, it kind of like lets go a little bit. But before you do that, it does exert a decent amount of force. Now, one thing I did notice, the thumb right here, it goes from this position, which by the way it's clipping a bit, so I need to fix that. Alright, so it goes from this position, and then in the very next frame it's in this position, and then it quickly moves to that. I don't really want that, so here are the thumb keyframes. So it moves very quickly. Now just take the end pose and you can just move it farther apart so it's a bit slower. And then of course fix any clipping issues that you may have by just moving things so that it doesn't intersect with anything. It'll make your animation look a lot more realistic if things don't intersect. Now, as you can notice, when the main body of the gun moves down like this, it moves right back up again. And that's because the keyframe, we haven't set that up yet. So just take this pose, which is correct where it moves down, and just take it and you can duplicate it. And then you can kind of rotate it and kind of keep the inertia that is being applied on this object, because all physics objects in the real world, or all objects really, have inertia, where once it starts moving, it wants to keep moving. And since this gun is decently heavy, I mean it's not like really insanely heavy, but it's not really light either, so it has a little bit of inertia, so it wants to keep moving in the downwards direction when you're pulling the magazine out. So we are going to be simulating that. Alright, that doesn't look, terrible. And I'm just going to fix up a couple of problems here, make it rotate a little bit more. And then of course, same problem, goes right back up to the old position. Just duplicate the most current one, and then apply inertia. You don't want so much inertia. It really depends on what you're animating, because this doesn't just apply to things like weapons. It can also apply to characters that maybe have like something really heavy on their back or something, like a big backpack. Now, as you can see, the magazine instantly moves from this position to this position in just one frame, so it's very unrealistic. Now we can just delete this frame right here, and then it'll be a lot smoother. But of course, that frame is also this, which is what the magazine actually goes down to. So that means that this frame is too early. This position is way too early. So you can just select it and then just move it away. And then of course, same problem as before, it moves right back up. Now here, I want to add a little more rotation, just to exaggerate it a tiny bit, make it a bit more lively. Now again, I did say not to exaggerate it too much, but this isn't really terribly exaggerated, so. Alright, that looks good. I'm going to speed up this part so that it goes in quicker. Now of course, the gun doesn't react to this, so again, you got to think about what forces are being applied to this object. I'm just gonna tweak a couple of things. Alright, now you may think that before the magazine actually goes in, that the gun is perfectly fine the way it is, where it's just, kind of staying there because nothing's really happening. However, with animation, something always has to be moving if it's like something that's alive. Now, the gun isn't alive, but our hands are. The hands are alive, and the hands are technically what would be moving in this situation. So it has to always be moving. Even if it's like a robot, robots also have inertia and they could move too, but with robots it's a bit different. We're not really talking about that here. So before the magazine goes in, I'm gonna just do very subtle movements. Subtle movements is a very good way to add some very nice touches to your animation. You don't want to make the subtle movements so incredibly subtle that you can't even see them, but you don't want to make them so incredibly exaggerated that it's like its own action. And then when it goes in, we want to react to that because it's moving upwards. And the main weight of the gun is probably somewhere in the front. It's maybe a bit front heavy, but since the hand goes here, when you're holding it here, it doesn't really matter. So it's a little bit front heavy, so it's going to lift the back up a bit more than the front. And of course, move it up, make it a little less exaggerated by spreading out to make it a little bit slower. And then of course, it looks weird because then it jumps back to the old position. So just duplicate it and then kind of move it about. And then with inertia, it wants to keep doing this, but your hand needs to hold on to it and you need to keep it steady. So the effect of that is probably where it's going to jump the other way. So let's make it a little more subtle. Add some rotation on some different axes. And keep in mind, it still is moving upwards. It's just the rotation part. And then, after that, it's, pretty good. But of course, it's really fast. The moment when you actually take out the magazine and then it goes back in is really, really, really short. And this is pretty easy to fix. Just spread out basically the two halves. So for example, the half where the magazine is taken out, and then the half where the magazine is put back in. So just kind of spread it out, make it a bit slower. So once we do that, we can basically just go back to the original starting position. But it doesn't really look that great, and I'm going to fix that. So now this looks kind of good. Well, kind of. It's not really that great. So a good way to fix this is to kind of have it fall in the character's hands. So when it's doing this, then when the gun goes up, after that, it just kind of like goes like that. Like it doesn't do anything else. It just goes like that and then like that. It doesn't look that great. So I'm gonna move this whole section up a bit. Now you may think this is really difficult, but it actually isn't. All you have to do is just open the graph editor, then go into the main and hit the Z location graph, then select the part you want to raise up and just grab it on the y-axis and it'll move all of that up. Alright, once you've done that, it will also raise up the original starting position, which isn't the same. So just take it and copy and paste it. Now again, this doesn't look that great, but that's actually pretty easy to fix. Just add more detail to your animation, add more subtle movements. Now, let's deal with this ending first before we kind of revise, because we started with the block out, now we're kind of doing draft 1. Now, you're going to have a couple of drafts, and animation can take hours. So once I got the ending done, which shouldn't be too hard, so you want to kind of fall in the player's hands and then move up. So now that doesn't look very good either, so it moves down too much. It's way too exaggerated. Now you may notice the hand takes forever to actually get back to the grip. Now you may think this is fine, however, it usually looks better if the hand reaches the grip before the gun gets into the final position. So I'm going to do that now and just copy the last keyframe over so that it holds the pose. Now the fingers aren't in the correct position either. So just select all the fingers. And go down, select all of the final keyframes in the last pose. And then copy them over. Now this part in particular, it just goes like that. And then the inertia kind of stops. It just like that. Now this isn't great, so I'm just gonna try playing around with the keyframes now. Now you may notice between these two keyframes there's almost no movement. Now you may think this is good since I said that subtlety is good. However, you want some movement that's, you know, noticeable, especially after inertia. Now after I fix the kind of inertia problem, when the magazine goes back in, it moves way to the right. That's because I haven't edited those keyframes yet. So I'm going to fix that by going to the graph editor, hitting the X location, which is the sideways movements, and as you can see in the graph, it drops drastically, which means it moves to the right, this way, a lot. So I'm going to fix that by just moving it up, so that's a bit less noticeable and a bit more realistic. Now, the magazine is bad. I mean, this part, when it goes in, is good, but then afterwards, it goes like that. You know, you're putting it in really fast, so there's going to be quite a bit of inertia. And even these fast movements, it indicates inertia. But in these frames, it doesn't. So I'm just going to rotate it back up. Now the magazine going in is a little fast, but we can actually just add a pause right here. So the hand can stay on the magazine, so it kind of feels like the action is lasting longer, but really it's not. And then of course, fix clipping issues. You know, making sure the hand does not go through the magazine, because that isn't very good. You don't want that, because it will look really weird and people are going to criticize you. Oh, this is really bad. It's going right through the weapon. Okay, let's fix this. I'm actually going to reset the position of the fingers. Not really the thumb. The thumb doesn't really need it. Oh, now the fingers are like that there. So let's fix that too. The rendering process is taking this really ugly gray material and turning it into something that looks really nice and somewhat realistic. Now the arm model that I'm using actually comes with materials and textures already, so if I go into material mode, you can see it does have textures and materials, but the weapon does not. Now, with Valve games, such as Counter-Strike, which is where I got this weapon model, you can actually extract the texture files from the game itself. This is super easy to do. I might make a tutorial on it later. I just have this program called GCFscape, and you can open up the pack files of the game and simply extract the textures. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. To actually apply the texture to the model, all you need to do is select the model, hit New Material, go to the Texture panel, and hit New Texture. Now you want to open the image wherever you saved it. Right here, hit Open Image, and there it is. Now, of course, this is only the body, and it doesn't affect things like the bolt or the magazine quite yet. So just select those and assign the same material. Now, it does look a lot better, but as you can see, it's very glossy, even though there are visible scratches on the texture. Now, there's a very easy way to fix this. Go into the Texture panel, and in this texture, the main color texture, scroll down, and under Influence, you want to go to the Specular section and check 3 of these boxes, all 3 of them, the intensity, color, and hardness. And as you can see, we have a very little amount of gloss, and it just looks a lot better because it's not super glossy. You can change how things influence each other, so you can have it influence those values less or more. Personal preference. I honestly like it the way it is. Okay, we're done with that. Now it's on the sound. I got my sounds from Counter-Strike, and I did the same thing to get the images, so I just use the same method. And the way you do this to actually add the sounds is you go into the video editing layout. Now the layout, it's right here, so just click this little tool shelf and then hit video editing, and it will look something like this. So just go into texture mode. I'm going to delete these sounds I already have there, and if we hit play on the animation, it's a bit slow, and that is because it is rendering this in real time, and the computer is kind of slow because it's rendering it on your CPU, which is slow. And something I noticed, I think the bolt doesn't go back quite fast enough. So let me just fix that really quickly. So back in the video editing, now there's no sound here, and it plays really slowly, but we can't really fix the slowness, but we can add sounds. Now you can just hit Z twice to go back into the solid view, and this will improve your performance. Now to add sounds, all you need to do is go down here, hit add sound, and I have a whole big folder just full of sounds. So the first one is probably the clip in and out, so I'm just gonna select all the ones I need. I need the bolt pull as well. I'm gonna hit add sound strip, and we'll add all 3. Now I'm gonna go to these, and in the sound section of the toolbar, I'm gonna hit draw waveform, and it will draw the waveform. I hope you can hear the sounds. I don't exactly know if you can, but I'm gonna go, and right when he takes the magazine out, I'm gonna select the correct sound. This is the clip out, so I'm gonna move all the other ones out of the way. So that's clip in, and this is clip out. I'm gonna position it. I need to get my headphones quickly so I can listen to this. I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm just gonna listen to the sound and see if it matches up. Alright, it seems to match up. Now, if you don't want to keep hitting play and doing trial and error, you can go to the playback and hit audio scrubbing. And I notice it's a bit too early. Alright, so I've done all that, and now we're actually ready to render the final image. So there are a couple of ways you could do this. You could use the OpenGL render, where you just switch to material mode, select the camera, and click the render animation, and this will simply render what's in your view. However, we can do an actual render, renders each and every frame. Now this will take a lot longer, but it generally looks a lot better because it actually adds a bunch of things like shading effects and shadows and ambient occlusion and everything like that. So you can choose whatever method you want. But before you do that, you have to make sure that it exports properly. So in the render tab, in the output section, you want to make sure that the file format is FFmpeg video, because that has sound in it. And then under encoding, go to presets, and then you can do H.264 and MP4. This is just the video stuff. You can play around with that. Then the audio codec, you can do whatever you want. AAC usually works for me. I just set the bitrate at 384 kilobits a second. If you don't know what that means, that's just the quality. Higher the quality, well, the higher the bit rates, the higher the quality. So you can turn it up if you want. 120 is kind of bad, but 384 is good. And AAC, I believe, is uncompressed. I think FLAC is also uncompressed, but I just found that AAC works for me. So once you do that, select a file output. This is where the name goes. Let's do tutorial and hit accept, and then you can render your image in any of the two methods that I described earlier, such as rendering it from the viewports. I am actually going to render it, and then I will show you what it looks like. So yeah, it is a little bit fast, but I mean, it's decent. But if it was slower, it would probably be a little bit better, and it could generally just be touched up a little bit. But other than that, it's not half bad. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little tutorial on animation. Well, it's not a little tutorial. This is like an hour long. I've been recording for an hour and 41 minutes. That's way too long. But I hope you learned something today, and if you did, you can leave a like on the video. So I'll see you next time.